Hi everyone, this is Ken DeLong, author of The Economic Comic. And today what I'd like to talk to you about is something you hear in the financial press all the time that I think is completely bogus, right? It's probably one of many things. But let's take this. Suppose the stock market is trundling along and then one day it drops by 5%. What are the newspapers going to say? The headlines are going to scream, trillions of dollars of wealth are lost. Americans are $10 trillion poorer or something like that. Complete and utter nonsense. All right. Let's talk this through and think about it. So suppose we have two people, Alice and Bob. And Alice and Bob each have $1,000 in cash. And also there's a company called the Acme Company, which has 1,000,000 shares. And the shares are currently selling for $500, and Alice has one of those shares. Now, the share, just in case you're not familiar with stocks, because the Acme Company has 1,000,000 shares, that means one share entitles you to 1/1,000,000th of the ownership of the Acme Company, right? So the Acme Company has a factory, and they have workers, and they have products that they make. And if they make 1,000,000 of these widgets, whatever it is they make each year, essentially Alice has ownership of one of those. It's not exactly how it works, but she's the 1/1,000,000th owner of the company. Now, let's say Bob decides, wow, this is Acme's at $500. I want one of those shares. So he buys Alice's share for $500. All right. So what state are we in now? Well, now Alice has $1,500 and in cash. Bob has $500 in cash and one share representing 1/1,000,000th ownership of the Acme Company. The total between the two of them is still $2,000 and one share. Okay. Now, the next day, I don't know, traders wake up on the wrong side of the bed and the stock market drops and Acme's price craters. It goes down to $100. Oh my God, trillions of dollars of wealth has been lost. And Bob decides, this wasn't a good trade. I'm getting out. And he sells his share back to Alice. Alice now has $1,400 because she did have $1,500. Now she bought the share back for $100. All right. So Alice has $1,400 and the one share of Acme Company. And Bob has $600. So together, what do they have? They have $2,000 in cash and one share of the Acme Company, the same as before. So yes, Bob is poor. Bob is worse off. He's poorer than he was before. He lost money, quote unquote, in the stock market. All right, but the money wasn't like lost into the ether of the stock market. It's not like you put money into the stock market and it just vanishes like that. Where'd the money go? It went to Alice. Okay, whatever money Bob lost, Alice gained. So net, they're on exactly the same footing as before. They're exactly the same total amount of wealth in the system. So whenever there's a seller in the stock market, there's a buyer, right? Stocks are bought and sold back and forth between investors. And so when one investor loses a lot of money, that means somebody else made a lot of money, right? They're better off than they would have been for having sold. It's another reason why another crazy thing you hear in the press is that, well, there's money on the sidelines, right? So Alice sold her share of Acme and she must have known it was overvalued. And so now that money was on the sidelines. Well, no, it wasn't, because the same amount of money was taken out of Bob's account and put into the stock market. There's the same amount of money in the system, right? There's not like money on the sidelines. Anyone who sells shares to get out of the market and get on the sidelines means that somebody else paid in the exact same amount. Right? So there's no way to get on the sidelines. Think about this. Suppose you're thinking about your neighborhood and you think cars are on the way out. So you sell your car to your next door neighbor. And then the newspaper says, Joe's neighborhood is out of the car market. They're sitting on the sidelines. It's like, well, no, they're not. The car's still there. I just sold it to my neighbor, right? It's not like the car went anywhere and the money just changed hands between me and him. Like before he was on the sidelines and now I'm on the sidelines, right? It's kind of ridiculous. Now, it doesn't mean that real wealth can't be lost. Okay. So let's say you're holding a share of Acme Company for $500 and overnight it burns down, right? And everybody at Acme dies and the entire inventory is destroyed. As a macabre story. But let's just say something horrible happens to the Acme Company, it sinks into the ocean, right? Okay, yeah, now your share's not worth very much. And yes, you have lost wealth because you owned 1/1,000,000th of that factory and now it doesn't exist anymore. So your piece of paper claiming a share of something that no longer exists is kind of worthless. Yes, in that case, you've lost wealth, right? But when the stock price just goes up and down, up and down, up and down with the random fluctuations of the stock market, nobody's gaining and losing. I mean, as an aggregate, there's no wealth created and destroyed. This is just, wealth transferring from one person to another. So some people are getting off, some people are getting worse off, depending on how well they can play that game. Right, but the amount of money there stays the same. It's only when there's a material change in the value of the company, right? One of the examples I use a lot, and Austrian economists use this a lot, is like, suppose you own a big tobacco farm with all the tobacco equipment, the drying, the farming equipment, harvesting equipment, and then people quit smoking. Well, all that stuff you own isn't worth very much anymore. I mean, the land you could sell to some other farmer to grow soybeans or something, and maybe you could salvage some of the equipment or sell the factory building to somebody else. But for the most part, you've lost pretty much everything, right? You'll salvage a little bit, but your $10 billion company is now worth like $5 million or something. And it definitely, that's a true loss of wealth. But just because the stock market goes down doesn't mean that trillions of dollars of wealth disappeared. And just because somebody sold that day doesn't mean the money's on the sidelines now, because somebody else put the exact same amount of money in. So whatever money's on the sidelines today is the same amount of money that was on the sidelines yesterday. So the moral of the story here is, don't believe all the crap you hear on TV and all the screaming pundits. Most of them don't know the first thing about what they're talking about. All right. So think for yourself, use your own brain. And if you want to do that, you can get my book, The Economic Comic, and you can join me for the next video where we'll talk about another topic. See you then. Hey guys, if you want to understand more about economics, but you're just tired of the jargon and the technobabble of professional economists and media pundits, then check out my book, The Economic Comic, which is available on Amazon. There you can learn some of the concepts of economics through comics. Thanks for listening.